up, guys? Tambo here with your Week 4 core report. Our cores have been on fire this season, and our guy Hoop nailed the Week 4 strategy, stacking up the Lions and Seahawks game. Hoop went cheap at quarterback, rostering Geno Smith with the double stack of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He then went full onslaught for the game by adding Jamal Williams, TJ Hawkinson, and Josh Reynolds from the Detroit side. Hoop topped off his lineup with several one-offs, including Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, and the Eagles D, racking up a score of 252 DraftKings points with a unique lineup that actually took out a 33-man dupe train, shipping the Hoopster $1 million in the Week 4 Millie Maker. Several of the players from Hoop's lineup appeared in his core plays and cash player pool provided to our premium members, who also had some pretty big weeks. MC won over 3K on DraftKings, Raholman hit for over 5K, Nika hit for over 6K, and Chase Addy NC shipped for over $45,000 on FanDuel. And Hoop isn't the only expert to hit big recently. JT Hayes hit for $20,000 in MLB last week. BigT hit once again, profiting over $33,000 on the NFL Week 4 afternoon slate. And our guy Locks had a huge night, shipping for over $213,000 on the Sunday Night Showdown slate. You can watch all of our experts for free by visiting our YouTube channel and subscribing right now. For our premium content, where you can access all of our core plays, playbook, Discord, premium videos, and more, visit runpuresports.com and sign up for a membership today. At RPS, every sport is included for one low price. Sign up for our premium membership today, and let's keep running pure.
What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you our lineup building show with our partners, SaberSim. I got my guy Jordan in here. Jordan, what is going on, my man?
Not a whole lot. It's Thursday once again here. I would hesitate to say we've got a good game of football here in front of us tonight, but we definitely have a game of football in front of us here tonight. So excited to talk about it, break it down a little bit, and build some lineups.
Can we please get a better game than what we saw last Thursday? Now we probably got to take an L. We both thought we would see some points in that game. I think a lot of people did out there. I don't think anyone saw a game where both defenses, both kickers were viable, but these Thursday games, sometimes they can be weird. I mean, we could see the exact opposite thing happen tonight, and which would be the most surprising outcome if you think about it. But there are paths to where I could personally see that happening. So what we're going to try to do, we want to hit on this game tonight like we typically do. The showdown slates are awesome. Big prize pools over on DraftKings and FanDuel. We're going to hit on this game, and then we want to touch on the main slate just because there's a lot of chalk. We want to try to identify a couple, maybe optimal lineups to look at ways to get off. So if we have enough time, we're going to do that for all of you. If you could for us, let's get this out of the way early. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps us out a lot over here at Run Pure Sports. Allows us to bring this to you for free each and every week. Jordan, let's dive into this game tonight. Commanders against the Bears. 38.5 total. Man, on the surface, so take the people through kind of our process. One thing that we're doing is we're trying to find that maybe more cash game type optimal so that we can look at getting different. Take us through this process.
Yeah. So, low total tonight, but close spread. So we might actually get a game that is at least entertaining as it gets down to the fourth quarter. When we're building lineups here, so we started doing this last week on this show. I think this is a pretty good idea moving forward. Running a cash build, right? So we'll put the builder in cash mode. When you look at the sliders, you see they all go 0, 0, 0 here. What we're basically doing, we're taking the SaberSim projections and we're building the best cash lineups, the highest projected optimals. These are going to be the lineups that everybody else out there that you're playing against using other optimizers, these are the lineups that they're going to get. So what we're doing here, really the purpose of this and why I like this in my process is to just get an idea of like, what is the field going to do? I think, we can get kind of an intuitive sense sometimes of looking at the total and the spread and just thinking like, hey, I think that defenses are going to be popular or kickers or running backs because of the total in this game. But I think sometimes seeing the lineups and actually looking at the exposures and just seeing what it looks like that way can be pretty helpful here. So we've got this build pulled up. And honestly, I mean, first glance, kind of exactly what I expected.
Bears captain. There we go.
Bears captain, Justin Fields, David Montgomery is kind of soaking up, altogether 75% of the top captains.
Jordan, do one thing for me. Change that Saber score to projected because I do think that's what your cat. Oh man. Oh baby. There you go. The optimal is spitting out double defense. I mean, if we go and talk to some of the cash game guys, Hoop, Mangone, Title, I definitely do not think they're putting in a defense at the captain. So it's really interesting to see this kind of on the surface. This optimal based off projections obviously is giving us. But let me toss it back to you, Jordan.
Yeah, and I think you can just kind of start looking at some of these lineups. I think this lineup 5 is probably what I think, at least it's just at a first glance, is going to be like the most popular optimal. I mean, maybe with a couple pivots there, but David Montgomery is the captain, and then you still get both defenses in his flex. I think something like this, the Bears are slightly favored. They're playing at home. I think like this is probably what that optimal is going to look like. But this is exactly why we run this build, is to try to get an idea of that, see what's going to be popular, see what the captains are going to be. And I also think looking at the team stacks and looking at these constructions can be useful here. Let's look at the stack types first. So almost no 5 stacks showing up as cash optimals here, mostly concentrated around 4 2s and 3 3s. And within those 4 2s, weighted a little more heavily towards Chicago Bears builds. So, I mean, you can kind of see it coming together here, right? Like the most common builds, probably defenses, probably some David Montgomery, maybe a little bit of Justin Fields captain, and like slightly Bears heavy, but mostly balanced builds coming out of the cash optimals here. And now we have a foundation to work from. And we know, how we can get a little bit different or maybe play a different game script.
Yeah, very good. Ryan Green, appreciate you watching this. Good question there. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. I got it noted. We'll get back to you. But I do want to make a few comments here. So I've been working on building so I do an article each and every week 3 times a week for all the main showdown slates, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday night. And I'm starting to build kind of a database of optimal lineups going back to the last 15, 20 builds for each team, taking some time, obviously, but it's interesting to look at. Now, I'm not saying like looking at past lineups and seeing what the optimal was like a good route to use moving forward. It's like, in finance, past performance does not dictate, what's going to happen in the future. I'm not saying that at all, but you can start to identify some trends, some build textures, which I like to look at and apply. And so just looking at the defenses right there, I think looking at the last 15 games from the Bears, they did have a defense land in the optimal once. That was against as a captain once. That was a 29-3 win over the Giants. And that was last year. Actually, that was this year, but last season. And we did this season see a double defense build work. Outside of that, you're not seeing it that often. And I bring that up because defenses are going to be very popular tonight. So right off the bat, we're always trying to find ways to get different. That's going to be an easy way to get different, reducing or eliminating those defenses from our builds. What do you think about that, Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an interesting psychological component here as well. I mean, that Thursday night game last week was terrible. Like one of the worst primetime games that I've ever actually sat down and watched. And I think that's going to be fresh on people's mind. I think people are going to, remember that. And I mean, it was a double defense, double kicker build that shipped unique last week. Like, I think people are going to even, play a little bit more defenses, a little bit more kickers, just because that game is still fresh in everyone's mind. So even more reason, I think, to maybe try to play a different angle, at least the way I'm going to be going about it.
Yeah. Another thing too, is looking back, against the Texans, it was 23-20. The Bears, I believe, got the W. We had Khalil Herbert as the captain optimal, with Jordan Akins, Damian Pierce, Chris Moore, Santos, and the kicker, and then Davis Mills. So, I mean, no defense there. I mean, that's like a script that I could see playing off tonight. One thing, too, is So Justin Fields what's crazy, he's only been optimal, and I'm talking in the flex or captain once this season, and that was against the 49ers. He was captain optimal. And we saw last season, especially as we got going in the season and later in the season, we saw a really nice connection between Darnell Mooney. He was he was optimal very often in there with Justin Fields when Justin Fields was good to go. Obviously, he was injured a middle portion of that season. But let's do our thing and start to add in some bias, some rules.
Yeah.
Let's start with you. Give me, I know we're both kind of doing a first take here tonight, but let's put in something that you see going. I know you talked, but before the show started, when we were talking, I liked what you had to say about the Commanders passing game. Probably are not going to be able to, running backs have done very well against this Bears team, but I do like that script. Maybe the Bears get up early and Carson Wentz is forced to come from behind. I think that's an interesting script that we could run. But what are you seeing early on?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, one thing that I've been doing lately, at least for my first build, is I've been doing a little bit of filtering of the player pool here, really just at the very bottom for the NFL showdowns. And I think it can be kind of useful. What I've been trying to do is kind of figure out, like, what's the last captain that I would actually be comfortable playing. And maybe tonight it's a guy like Diami Brown, who caught 2 long ones last week, in a low total game. Maybe he's the optimal captain, but then actually setting that filter there to limit that, to remove all the other filters here. So in this case, I guess he's 7.0 even. So I'll set this for 6.9. And it just makes the builds look a little bit better to me right off the bat. We're trimming off, just for the captains, some of the fat down there at the bottom. I've been doing the same thing at the flex position, mostly just for the guys that are projected for under a point, right? Like, I want Velus Jones Jr. in my lineups. I want to be getting a little bit of Ryan Griffin in my builds. But some of these guys that are projected really low, like under a point, I found that I kind of like filtering them out too. So I don't know if you've experimented with any of that, AP, but I found that I just get a better foundation to work from when I apply some of those filters right off the bat.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up. I typically do more of a manual process there. So it's nice learning about that rule there, where I'm just crossing a player off or manually moving their projection to 0 or 0.1 or something like that. So
Sure.
No, that's an easier way to do it. Also tonight. So let's do this. Let's just say, what if we say no kicker or no defenses and only one kicker in there? Because you have to think, after what happened last week, Thursday night, everyone is going to be higher on the defenses, higher on the kickers, especially when you look at these two teams and when you look at the totals. However, I don't know. I think we could see some of these. There are skill players on both sides of the ball here that could get it done. Darnell Mooney, if you see that catch last week, the dude is an absolute stud. David Montgomery back, Justin Fields, he can get it done on the ground. And then on the other side, let's just say the Bears do kind of take the lead early. Man, you're going to see Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, maybe more J.D. McKissick. We could be under on Antonio Gibson. Maybe people are higher on the running game here. Actually, I don't think they will be. They've been pretty bad. But teams have been able to run on this Bears team. And then, the tight end. So we got Cole Turner is really cheap, and he ran 42%. He was on 42% of the snaps last week and ran 15 routes. So that could be maybe a punt value there, 300. Maybe we give him, what's his current projection? 3.9. Okay. And we got him even higher than that. Let's just leave it be. I was going to say, give him a fair projection. The thing about these punt values, if you give them a 2.5 projection or a 3, they're going to find their way into your builds. It's just, man, they become such an elite value, and they're going to start to force in all of these other playmakers into your builds. Think about Kansas City showdown slates. It is trying to force in these punt values because it wants Mahomes in there. It wants Kelsey. It wants, all of those guys in there. So I think that's interesting. But so the basic builds are no defenses and only one kicker from either side. I think is a decent set. Is there any other rules that you want to set?
No, I think that's a good place to start from. The nice thing with SaberSim is we don't have to do everything all at once. We can, do a couple of these things, run a build, see how it's looking, and come back if we need to. Real quickly, just for maybe people that are watching this show for the first time, the way I did that, what AP's talking about here is I just unchecked those defenses here from the captain and the flex positions. And then we set a quick rule here in the lineup rules section. We set a manual grouping rule, and we put all four of the kicker positions, really, both kickers at captain and flex, and said you'll use no more than one here. So those rules are now in effect, and we can run some builds and see how it's looking.
Yeah, I like that. And yeah, it's not, perfect. It's a little blurry for sure. We're working on that. I think it was Matt was asking about that. So bear with us.
Is my screen blurry for you guys?
Just a little bit. I don't think I'm looking at it. I mean, I can't is it perfect, crystal clear? No, but can I read, some of the names here? I can. So Khalil Herbert, I mean, I can see it. So it's all good. Real quick, I want to get hit on this question that was asked. What up, guys? Newish to SaberSim. Can't seem to get enough exposure to the guys I like. Does this have to do with not switching to manual and messing with the sliders? Question mark.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much about the sliders. I think, a lot of times people build their lineups and they jam up minimum exposure to some particular player, and then it can't find those lineups, right? And I mean, the reason why is that when you're running your build, the guy's not projected high enough for SaberSim to think he's a good play, at least in the top 1,500 or the top 500, or however many you're building. I mean, I think the very best thing you can do if you're finding you're not getting enough of a guy you want in a build is to just go back to the home screen and bump the projection up a little bit, or bump the team projection up as a whole. And we can show how to do that in a second, because that's really what's going on there behind the scenes when you're getting that message. So that's my best advice. That's typically what I do, and then try another build from there.
All right, very good. All right, so you ran, let's see, we did a pool of 1,500, 50 lineups. Our top captain's Curtis Samuel. I know that my boy Snyder is a fan of Curtis Samuel tonight, so that is very interesting. Darnell Mooney, I like this. This sets up, obviously, for a script where we're going to see points tonight. We know there's a lot of variance on these Thursday night games. There are we've seen a lot of bad games, and this projects to be a bad game. So while these playmakers are going to get some ownership, I still think they're going to be much lower owned than what they should be. And I think the defenses, kickers, and everything are going to be higher owned relative to what they should be. So we can be contrarian by going to what I think are the best plays on this slate. Yep. So talk me through this. What are you seeing here, Jordan?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, it's taken us in the direction that I was kind of hoping here. We're getting some wide receivers right at the top, the quarterbacks, even a little bit of exposure to David Montgomery, who I do think is going to be a more popular option here. I mean, one thing that I'd be interested to go in and see here, and I know you've done this before, we saw that those 3-3s and 4-2s, especially Bears favored 4-2s, are going to be pretty popular. I mean, I'd be interested in just kind of experimenting with like what happens if we X those out. What are your thoughts on like the more construction level here for tonight?
Yeah, I think it's always so different for me. Early on, I was kind of a fan of doing this, and tonight I do think going the onslaught 5-1, that might be unique. Like in multi-entry formats, I might, just because I know just from looking at this right here, it's going to be very contrarian. So if we want more uniques in our lineups, getting 5-1 stacks is going to be a way to do that tonight. But I don't because I don't want to cross off the 3-3s, because there could be some viable 3-3s where we're fading defenses and kickers. I think that's unique tonight, because I think people are going to have either a kicker or a defense in their build. So getting exposure to playmakers on both sides, I think is going to be a way that's somewhat contrarian. And then if I look back, I mean, this year alone, the last captains in these Bears slates for optimal lineups: Justin Jefferson, so opposing wide receiver 1; Daniel Jones, opposing QB; Khalil Herbert, that was the backup running back; Aaron Jones, opposing running back 1; and And then earlier in this year, Justin Fields, obviously in that ugly game against the 49ers. So what that tells me is, I mean, that 49ers game was ugly, but Fields still ended up being the optimal in the captain spot. So long story short, Jordan, like I won't mess with these stack types too much tonight, just because what I plan on doing is fading all the defenses and limiting kickers to just one per build. And I think that's going to be on the surface from a macro viewpoint. That's going to allow me to get different enough. And then I'm going to kind of dive in. I'll actually probably be doing more work in step 3. So here, and obviously things could change if any news hits, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
What are you thinking for your captain pool overall? I mean, one thing that I'm noticing is that, 50 builds here, we are getting a pretty diverse captain pool, 14 different captains. I mean, I think I'd probably trim this down a little bit even further from what I did with the filter before build, but I'm curious your thoughts on how you're approaching the captains.
Yeah, so on the surface, and obviously like my article will be up later today, but I like Justin Fields. I like Darnell Mooney. I like Terry McLaurin. I like and I like just said his name. Who is the guy up there? Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
I like him. So the playmakers is where I am looking at. I like the receivers. I think I'm gonna keep my captain pool pretty condensed there, and then you could make the case for Carson Wentz, but you need the right script there. So I want to side with, I want to side with the rushing upside here that we're going to get from Justin Fields. So between the two, while I will have double QB builds tonight, I'm going to side with Fields in the captain spot. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I like the pricing too. I mean, we're so used to these KC's on KC Homer, obviously, but they're on so many showdown slates. We're just used to like these high price tags on all of these playmakers, and we're not getting that tonight. So we can fit in a ton of these dudes. So I'll probably limit my captains to the playmakers. What about you?
Yeah, I think I like playing wide receivers at captain tonight. I think I could see myself or just pass catchers in general. I think maybe some of the tight ends are interesting to me too. But I think that's probably will be my approach. At least the first pass is really just hoping that the wide receivers get involved here. And on SaberSim here, I mean, you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. You can uncheck these captains here right at the end of the build, and it'll just filter in new lineups from our pool. Or we could go back here if we wanted to run another build here with a more restrictive captain pool and actually just go in and check the specific guys we wanted to get in there that you mentioned before here. So, Fields, Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Mooney, all these guys here. So I actually think that's probably what I would do if I was running this for my final build, is I would do it like that. I think I missed one of those names that you said there, but and we could run another build.
That actually, let's do run one more. I mean, this might look very similar to what I do tonight, but that's okay. Is there any problem going like 5? Well, like the sim diversity right there in Showdown, obviously we went from 0 now to 10. Can you talk us through that? Like, why would someone in multi-entry formats want to have that 10 sim diversity?
Yeah. So what 10 sim diversity does is it's building every lineup from a single game sim. So we have thousands of sims for this game on the slate here tonight. And the sim diversity is basically how many sims are we taking into account per lineup? And for Showdown, since it's so important to get basically the optimal or very close to the optimal, we only want to look at one sim per lineup. That's basically the goal. That's basically what NFL Showdown is. I would say, you could take it down if you want to a bit. I would say 8 or 9 is the lowest I would go ever with sim diversity for NFL Showdown, just because it is so important to be getting very close to or nailing that exact optimal to end up taking anything down. Especially, if you're playing the Millie Maker, if you're playing really large field contests, just stay at 10 sim diversity because that's what you're going to need to ultimately win.
Yeah, very good.
We'll give the lineups here a second to load. We do have, I'll mention some pretty exciting just speed improvements here coming in the next couple of weeks. We've been making a lot here basically since football starts, so that the app has already come a long way in terms of speed. You see that the builds are running quite a bit faster. We have some more improvements in that department, just all across the app, making everything easier to use. So pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I like that. We got Sterling in chat. Watch him fade. Sterling, man, if you've seen me before, I'm very transparent. I can tell you, if you go back and like look at what my builds were on last Thursday night's show, they're very similar to what we ran here, and it wasn't successful. I can tell you that. I could send you the screenshots. It was not a winning night for me. It is what it is. That's why we preach bankroll management over here. But Jordan, that looks pretty good.
It does.
Curtis Samuel, 36%. We got Justin Fields. Some of those builds look good too. Limiting one kicker. That's I like that quite a bit. I think we're on to something, man.
Yeah, no, I think it's looking good. And I mean, exactly what we did here is what I recommend people do with their process, right? Is do a little bit, build some lineups, see what they're looking like, see what you want to make some changes to, come back, make a couple more changes. And like now we're looking pretty good. Now would be a good point, maybe if we wanted to balance out some exposures, right? Maybe we said here, that we wanted to get up to 20% Terry McLaurin or something like that. We could do that really easily here, just editing the min exposure. So fine tuning in that kind of final build phase and making the bigger adjustments in the home screen is the way to go.
I like it. If anyone has questions regarding Showdown, feel free to drop them in the chat. But I do want to go to the main slate, Jordan. We got a phenomenal slate. This morning, I put on the old Bills versus Chiefs playoff game from last year. Just, how to get the morning right. Set it up. Good mojo. 13 seconds. The Hero Mahomes game, all of the above. We get the rematch this Sunday in the afternoon slate. And, this slate looks like a ton of fun. But before I dive into that, again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. We got the Print Factory coming on later today with Big T, Tambo, JSU, and the crew, and a special coordinator over here at Run Pair Sports is going to hop on too, I believe. Megan's going to hop on. She is the Commander Whisperer. She has a few hot takes that she's going to talk about for members, so make sure that you catch that show later on today. But Jordan, we get this slate, this main slate that we're going to tackle right now. So could you set it up for, let's try to identify the optimal kind of cash build, or how you would go about looking for an optimal cash build this week. I think this slate sets up to be a ton of fun. If you're winning money early, it's going to be, for me, anyone that follows me, it's going to be, I got them right where I want them type of week. I'm not going to be playing a ton of plays from the early window. I'm loading up on KC and Bills. I'm loading up on Cardinals, Seahawks. These games against the Seahawks have been an absolute printer. I don't see that changing, even with Geno Smith under helm. He's been able to get it done. And I'm not afraid of this Cardinals defense. And so for me, it's going to be picking and choosing from the early window. There are some really interesting plays that I like. Some nice values, in the receiver position, Alec Pierce, George Pickens. We got the Tampa situation. Chris Godwin still a little bit underpriced. I'm really curious to see where the optimizer ends up, from an optimal standpoint. And I would, again, switch it to projected to get those highest up there. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does.
Yeah, on a showdown, I think it's going to matter a little bit more. On the main slate, it looks like it's the same lineup as the top projected and the top Saber score here. And you can tell too, from the exposures alone, that there is going to be like a very defined cash game core this week. Ramondre, Kenneth Walker at the running back, Higbee tight end, Rondale Moore and Tyler Lockett on both sides of that game. And I think Josh Allen is probably going to be like the most popular GPP quarterback and the de facto cash game quarterback here. So that's leaving 3 roster spots that you kind of pivot around from there. I think it's an interesting week where, there are some opportunities, I think, really to get well off the chalk and still be on some pretty good plays. So,
right off the bat, we're running Josh naked, Josh Allen naked, Josh naked Allen, running Josh Allen naked. And that's the only exposure here to the Kansas City game. What I would like to do, I want to bump up Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We saw a really nice connection between him and Mahomes on Monday night. He appears to be the trusted guy over Juju Smith. He's quick. He knows how to get open. He knows how to find space. That's what Mahomes likes. Just look at the connection, with Kelsey, obviously. Juju is still trying. They have a little bit more work to do. The other guy I like that I think is very sneaky is Jerick McKinnon. I like him because, they trust him against teams with a good pass rush. go back to these games against the Bills. He's getting far more work, far more timeshare in pass, where they need extra pass protection versus CEH. So McKinnon, 4.7K, going to get dump offs out of the backfield. Very strong runner, looked really good Monday night. He's another guy that I think is sneaky in tournaments only. Let me just say that. But I want exposure to this game. So can we set some rules?
Yeah.
Here's the first one I'm thinking about. Allen or Mahomes. We prefer Allen because we get the rushing upside. Mahomes will rush, but typically only in the playoffs. So, he's going to be a little bit more conservative regular season. That's kind of a trend we've seen. And then
you mean only Allen, or you want to only play Allen or Mahomes?
No. Okay. Let's say Allen, Mahomes, and then let's say Geno Smith.
Okay.
Like those three quarterbacks.
Yep.
Just to see if we need a value piece in there. And then let's start building. Let's just make some simple rules. Let's say Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis. But we want one of them in the lineup. And then let's say Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Juju. I don't feel great about Juju, and I don't feel great about McCole Hardman. But can we add it so that actually Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis, and with whoever, we're automatically running back with MVS. I actually like that a lot better.
Okay. So, yeah.
So now what we're doing is, forcing in some exposure to this Bills-Chiefs game, but we still want to run it kind of like a cash optimal. Does that make sense?
It does. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So we can do that. So I'll quickly just kind of explain what we did. So we limited our QB pool. So we only have Allen, Mahomes, and Geno. We set a quick manual rule here and said must use at least one of Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis here. And then we locked in MVS. So we're forcing him in and just seeing what those, you want to see what those cash optimals look like?
Yeah, because we talk about all the time, sometimes these cash builds are viable in tournaments. And I think this week could be the case again, but we got to find a way to get a little bit different. And I think we can do that with some simple rules that we're putting into SaberSim.
Yeah, and I think this can also be an interesting way of just kind of seeing like where some pivots show up, or like what does this do to the rest of the lineup when you start jamming in other players? Where does salary open up? So let's take a look and see. How's my quality coming through? Are we still doing okay on the screen quality, or how's that looking?
We got a bunch of jokesters in chat, so I don't trust their opinion. I'm looking at you, Sterling. I'm looking at you, Skull. No, they're fine. I wouldn't worry about them at all. And then we got GQ. Yeah, Juju does stink. I agree with you there. I'm a Chiefs guy, but yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster does stink. He needs a little bit more time to find that connection with Mahomes.
So yeah, we've got the build up here now. You can see it. It definitely decided that there was one way to handle this. 100% Stephon Diggs, 100% MVS. Given what we put in, I guess we did lock in MVS, but So
how would
the
you
cash builds?
Can you now like put like a 50% cap on Stephon Diggs, or is he in 100% of
this
our
build?
pool?
Because he is in 100% of our cash pool.
So show the people what happens though, because this is a common question. Like if you tried to do this, you're going to get an error that pops up, and it's going to ask you, I believe it's going to ask you to make more builds, right?
Yep. So it'll look like this.
So what should someone do if they encounter this issue, which comes up a lot, I imagine?
Yeah, so I would click send exposures home. And I think, what that's going to do is it's basically going to say, it's going to send that back here. It's going to tell SaberSim, hey, only use, we can actually just go and look at this here. So Diggs's max exposure here now is set to 50 here, right? So, if you've done this for 20 different players, right, we would send all those exposures home. Now we can come back here if we wanted to do this again, run another build. And this time we're saying we'll get probably 50-50 Gabe Davis and
50-50. Yeah, and I see why it's not. I see why like that projection on Gabe Davis is kind of low. I like Gabe Davis. Like, look at Devontae Adams, what he did against the Chiefs last game. Davis is going to be the guy with the deep routes. We know that KC wants to take away Stephon Diggs. They don't want him to be the guy that beats them. So I could see Gabe Davis having himself a night again. Rewatching that game this morning, 4 TDs, 200 yards. Just an incredible performance last year. I want to.
I think the other thing too is since we're running these builds as cash builds, like he's a guy that, on the average projection isn't going to project as well as Diggs. He's kind of more the upside guy there. So I think if we ran some tournament builds here, you'd start to see him pop in a little bit more naturally. But like even here, we're starting to get a little bit more of Gabe Davis popping in there. So the cash builds look pretty good here.
I like that. One thing that's interesting is, man, if these projected chalk running backs fail this week, you're going to get guys like Christian McCaffrey, very, very low owned. I mean, he's going to be, I played him last week. He was kind of a flag plan of mine. The opportunity was there, but against a much tougher defense, he was like 2% owned. And anytime I can get Christian McCaffrey, 8K range, 2% owned, I'm going to have some interest. So what I'm going to be doing, Jordan, this week is building just like this, like you're doing here, but I'm going to find some ways to kind of sneak in some of these running backs with big upside that are going to go very overlooked because of the spot a Ramondre Stevenson is in, and the same with Kenneth Walker too. But the path for failure is there. I mean, it's DFS, it's football, it's NFL. Like, are we really trusting the Patriots coming off a monster game? I mean, what if the Browns just decide to absolutely stomp them and show up here? I mean, that could be a path for failure for a guy like Ramondre Stevenson. So, and he's 6K. It's not like he's like a 5K, running back. So I don't know. It's interesting. What do you have any initial early reads on the main slate this week?
Yeah, so I think there's one, I think there's going to be a lot of excitement for Bills Chiefs, justifiably so. And I think it has, 55 and a half, 56.5 point total, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously going to project very well. I also think both teams are going to recognize how important of a game that this is. And I could see them playing a little bit safer in this game here, where a little bit more of an emphasis on field position, and like I would not be surprised to see this game go under. It might also just be my contrarian like head speaking here, where I kind of just like to fade the chalk anyway. But I think that's a potential angle here of how this could play out. So I haven't run a lot of builds for the main slate. I don't know what a lot of the other games look like. I'll have to do a little bit more research in that department, but I could see that. I could see there being disappointment in this late
so
game.
The way the game goes under, it's a sharp take, but you're going to be sweating the entire game, which is why I can't bet an under on a game like this. But I do think it is relatively sharp. Josh Allen, the Bills, they saw what happened when they left 2 minutes on the clock last year. So if they have the opportunity on that final drive to take it and take the 6 minutes or however much time is left and just run the clock out and then end up kicking the ball, as time's expiring, that's what the Bengals constantly did against Kansas City. And they were so successful at it. They kept the ball out of Mahomes' hands. And so, that's a way where this game falls under that total, because we're going to expect so much scoring in that, that final quarter. And if you think about it too, I think that game started off slow. It was like 7-7. I think it was 7-14 at halftime. So it was projecting to be under, and then the game obviously just blew up. And in 2 minutes, we saw an insane amount of points. So I don't like mind that take at all. I'm just trying to think of so like what I kind of do, Jordan, what I'm going to start doing is running it kind of like this, trying to find that cash game optimal. And then the other thing is some of these values that I like to, one, set some rules like you did. And then two, I like to manually bump up some of these values. So I'm looking at, like, in tournaments, Jerick McKinnon on that game script that I talked about, where I'd want Jerick McKinnon and MVS in there with an Allen to Diggs or Allen to Davis. That's going to be my stack in that game. But then I'm looking at Alec Pierce from the Colts. He's 4.3K. I would give him a little bit of a bump. George Pickens, 4.6K for the role that he's in. I think he's somewhat interesting. And so what I will start to do is bump some of these guys up, and then I'll look at some of the chalk that we looked at, and I'll just bump them down a little bit just to see how it changes the build. And I'll run, like, up to Sunday, I'll run, 10, 11, 12 different builds, just trying to, like, dial in and see what what builds that pop, what look good, what's trying to fit the narratives that I see panning out. What do you think about that? Is that something that you do? Or are you typically just letting the Sims do their thing each and every week?
Yeah, so I do a lot more. I don't touch individual player projections as much with football. I will kind of pick some spots. So what I'll typically try to do here is I'll find, based on my research process, if I'm finding chalk that I don't like, I'll ultimately end up adjusting my exposure down post build to get off of that guy. But one of my favorite things to do is to also figure out like what are the guys that player is negatively correlated with. So you can kind of see Ramondre Stevenson here, right? His biggest negative correlations. Defense, kind of a crapshoot, but very negatively correlated to like the Browns offense going off here, right? And that makes intuitive sense, right? If the Browns score a ton of points, then the Patriots got to start throwing the ball. Then Ramondre Stevenson's not getting as much on the ground here. So I might all of a sudden then become a little bit more interested in a guy like Nick Chubb. Like if Ramondre is my favorite fade of the slate, which again, I haven't done a lot of research in that department yet here. I might actually find my way over to some more Nick Chubb builds. And that might be a guy then that I'm boosting up here.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. So we had a question, just I'm very new here. What do you mean cash versus tournaments? Chat helped you out there. Good answers, chat. Appreciate that. But yeah, cash is head-to-heads, double ups, trying to double your money. It's what I would say the edge is, they're saying there's no edge. Debatable. The edge is reduced definitely because of how efficient the cash game markets are. But if you're like in a head-to-head group with some buddies and stuff, yeah, roll out these optimal builds. You're gonna be ahead of those guys. So it all depends on what it is that you're playing. If it's a home game, playing with buddies, $5, a week, something like that. Which I have a lot of friends that do that. Use this information, to your advantage. But in tournaments, what we often see winning, sometimes the weeks are just very, very contrarian, and the chalk just fails. We saw that a couple weeks ago. Then some weeks are like last week. Actually, the last 2 weeks, where a lot of these optimal builds are way, way up there. Snyder, I was talking to him, his cash game build scored over 205 points. I mean, that destroyed my tournament builds. My tournament builds were like 145, 150. I mean, he smoked me. So cash game plays are the best, most efficient, the best values across the board. And it's just putting them all, jamming them all into a lineup. But in tournaments, think about little differences that you can make to get different. I think on certain weeks, that's going to be key. But this could be, maybe some of these games, everyone's going to be focused on this late slate. And there's not like a ton of games in that window. What if they fail for some reason? Think about what's a low-owned game that you could target that would be different. I'm looking at the Bengals Saints. Joe Burrow to Chase or Higgins stacks are going to be very low-owned. Running it back with Chris Olave or Kamara, whoever. That's going to be a game that really goes overlooked. There's many games here that are going to go overlooked. So there are ways to get different for the ultra contrarian types this week. I, however, am locked in onto the Chiefs Mahomes game or the Chiefs Allen game. So that's where I'll be. I just think MVS is underpriced. I think there's a high probability of Allen or Mahomes or even Geno Smith being kind of that optimal quarterback. And so I'm kind of flatting the flag and I'm going there. We do got to wrap this up, but Jordan, give me kind of your final thoughts, showdown and for main slate.
So I one final thought that I definitely want to mention on the SaberSim side, right? We did a few cash builds here to experiment, to do some research. Once you get to the point where you feel like that research is complete, you're making some player adjustments, you understand what your stands are going to be. Make sure you are running your final. I want to be clear. Make sure you're running your final lineups in GPP mode for the reasons AP exactly just explained, right? We want to make sure when we're building those final tournament lineups that we're getting to take advantage of things like correlation and diversity and the ownership and things like that. So the cash builds are more of a research kind of thing, unless you're playing cash, of course. But for your tournament builds, the cash builds are more for a research thing. I'll leave you with one thought now that I've had at least just a minute to look at this slate a little bit. My underlook game of the week, I think that Ravens-Giants game is kind of interesting here. Lamar Jackson, like the one other quarterback on this slate here that has like slate-breaking upside here with what he can do on the ground. And the Giants look like they could be maybe actually a good football team. I think there's a chance that this game actually ends up doing pretty well. I think the Giants could stay with the Ravens. I believe that game is at home for them here as well. So a game that I think might get you off some of the chalk there with both the Arizona Seahawks game and the KC and Buffalo game.
Yeah, I would never talk anyone out of playing Saquon Barkley. The dude is an absolute stud, has the ability to break a slate. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting take. For me, it's just I'm going back to KC Bills. So I'll be the chalk donkey this week. But hopefully, what I want to do is get off some of these mega chalk plays, focus in on this game, and hopefully they don't hopefully a Ramondre Stevenson doesn't post something stupid like 30 plus DK points. Same with Kenneth Walker. That's kind of what I'm avoiding this week. And then, yeah, in Showdown tonight, again, stay tuned. Later this afternoon, we have the Print Factory with BigT, JSU, Tambo, and Megan, all going to be breaking it down for our members. Again, if you haven't yet, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. If you have questions, SaberSim related, we have a channel in our Discord. Use that channel, tag the SaberSim coordinators in there with your questions. That's the best way to get them answered. NBA starts next week, Tuesday. The first big main slate is Wednesday. We'll be dialed in, ready to go. We may switch things up, at certain times, looking at some of those NBA slates. However, on Thursday, I don't know if you've seen it, Jordan, but the NBA slates on Thursdays are pretty small. So we're going to be pretty focused on NFL, I believe, but at some point in time, we will introduce the NBA back into the lineup building show. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Anything like updates that anyone should know about, then we'll get out of here for NBA regarding Saber. Yeah,
I will just say our big focus right now is on speed, making the apps faster, easier to use, that kind of stuff. I don't want to give too much away in that department, but more updates coming very soon on that. So look forward to that, and we're very excited about some of these performance updates. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, very good. Again, if you ever have any questions, or if you ever want us to discuss or cover something, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message, give us a few days, and we will dial it into this show. We'll be back here next week, next Thursday, covering the showdown slate that night, and hopefully the main slate, just like we did today. Thank you all for watching. I'm AP. That's Jordan. Simon, get us out of here.